What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and today we're going down a traffic rabbit hole. I will be ranking and reviewing Traffic's 8 albums. I'm including that half studio, half live one, but none of the other live ones, studios. Not discussing the movie Traffic, nor will I be discussing the movie Freeway with Reese Witherspoon, which was a really good movie. But anyways, yeah, Traffic, the band. I have 2 lists for this channel. I have a list of what I'm going to do next. It's always 4 artists, any of which I will do like for my next video. Kind of just mentally prepare myself. These are the 4 I'm going to do. And then I have this really lengthy list that anytime I come up with an artist who will fall under the rubric of Frank Zappa's Big Note, I add them to that list. And Traffic was on the long list. It was on the branch of the tree that started with Eric Clapton and it went from there. And so I was not planning on doing Traffic anytime soon. But I recently, on my YouTube feed, another YouTube channel called Taste Like Music, either they recently did the Traffic albums or for some reason it popped up on my feed. And in one of their reviews, or in discussing the band Traffic, one of them, there's 3 of them, said something to the effect that, like, if you have gone your whole life as a music fan and you have not heard Traffic, you are either not missing anything or not hurting. Like, it just has no overall effect on like music. And it was just, they're just there. Something to that effect. And I was like, nah, I felt like that was a little harsh. It's an opinion, whatever. I'm not complaining. You know, everybody's got their own. There are some Traffic albums I really like, and there are some Traffic songs I really like. So I was like, I'm going to do some Traffic. I'm going to revisit these albums, listen to them once through, remind myself what I like about them, and then I'm going to rank and review them. So that's why we're here. We originally could get here through Eric Clapton because Clapton and Steve Winwood, who was in Traffic, were in Blind Faith, and Traffic is on the We're Only in It for the Money album. No, Clapton is on the We're Only in It for the Money album. But, and this is sort of synchronicity of sorts, as I discovered, rediscovered, Jim Gordon, the drummer, plays on a couple Traffic albums, or at least one Traffic album. And he was in the band from like 71 to 72 for a couple years. And he is also, could not have been there in 72. He is also the drummer on Zappa's most recent release, Waka Wazoo. He plays on the live Petit Wazoo portion of that release, which I will soon, if you're watching this, which I might have just posted a video about. Doing this early because I have time before Christmas. But anyways, yeah, it's either up or it's about to be up. But yeah, there's the Jim Gordon connection also. But yeah, I like Traffic. Their first 2 albums are very much rooted in like late 60s psych pop. There's a lot of, especially on their first album, a lot of tracks which just I don't think have aged very well. They started to grow out of that on their second album. By the time they got to like their 3rd, 4th, and 5th albums, they were pretty much a prog rock band. They're like a soft prog rock band. Steve Winwood's keyboards carried a lot of the load. I think the drummer Jim Capaldi, who was Chris Wood, was in the band. He would play a lot of flute and saxophone, so you had that sort of airy, progressive, pastoral feel for some of their more acoustic-y stuff, which I'm not a big fan of. They had some good guitar playing, both by Dave Mason early and then Steve Winwood when Dave Mason left, that lent some nice little jammy feel to some of their songs. I can't say either one of their guitar playing is excellent or that different from just like a guitar player, but there were some really good moments and some really good jams and some really good vibes. And so, yeah, I think they're, for the most part, they have some really good stuff. I first heard Traffic. I'm not a big Steve Winwood fan in general, but I went to see him back in like the 80s on, I guess it's his Back in the High Life tour. Was that the name of that album that was huge? I think it was called Back in the High Life. But I went with my mom and my stepdad, and I went to see them at the Pacific Amphitheater in California, or Southern California. And in the Back in the High Life again, was that what Back in the High Life? Yeah, that album. So when was that? Like 87, 86, 87? And in the middle of that set, he introduced, I don't even think he introduced, but he played Low Spark of High-Heeled Boys, which I had not heard before and really liked. And then that, I think, segued directly into Glad, the opening track off John Barleycorn Must Die. And I love that. Just that dun 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 dun, that jammy piano thing. Absolutely fell in love with that. And I didn't inspire me to go seek out Traffic after that. But I think I was a little more aware listening to the radio. I had heard, I then realized that they were playing Feeling All Right a little more. KMET would play it. No, KMET wasn't around by then. KLOS was the only one around by mid-80s. I'd heard that. I think there was another Traffic song that I heard on the radio a couple times. So they were on my radar. And it wasn't until my freshman year in college, went to see the Grateful Dead at Shoreline in October of 88, or it might have been September, but it was like the first shows when I was going to school up in Berkeley. And I got a ride home from a friend of mine, and he had a Volkswagen van, like your full-on microbus, man, beautiful. And I was sitting in the back of that. It's like an hour drive home from Shoreline to Berkeley. And I was still in like a post-Grateful Dead alert state, very psychedelically alert. And he played John Barleycorn Must Die, the Traffic album. And I just, when Glad came on, the opening track, was like, I know this. This is like, and it took me a while to remember why I knew this. And from that point on, I just kind of fell in love with that album. Definitely fell in love with the title track of that album. And then I kind of started to actually seek out Traffic albums at that point, my freshman year in college. So yeah, and I kind of listened to them on and off. Though I will admit there are 3 albums on this list I never, ever listened to. I revisited them just for the sake of this video, and those will be the bottom 3 on the list, obviously. But anyways, yeah, that's it. On to number 8. And yeah, all right, let's go now. Number 8 is 1994's Far From Home, a sort of Traffic reunion album. It only features Steve Winwood and Jim Capaldi as far as former Traffic musicians go, plus other couple other musicians. I think like Capaldi plays drums, plays percussion. Steve Winwood, I think, plays almost everything else. I think he sings all the songs. It pretty much feels like a Steve Winwood solo album, like a late 80s Steve Winwood solo album. There are moments where they kind of dip into some progginess, but not for very long. It utterly bores me as an album. I think I bought it when it came out just because it was a new Traffic album, and I thought maybe with Steve Winwood's success in the late 80s, then maybe he would like indulge in some more like progginess and maybe explore and push the envelope and maybe do more creative things than he ended up doing on this album. I got nothing to say about anything on this album. I think it's just not a very good album. If you like solo Steve Winwood, if you like that Back in the High Life, or what was the other one, Roll With Me, or I don't even know. Like, if you're waiting for a Steve Winwood album video, it's not going to happen on this channel. I don't ever listen to Steve Winwood. And I just don't like this album. I don't like this album. It's not for me. It's not the kind of music I want to hear. It just sounds like late 80s, early 90s pop from a singer-songwriter who has never been edgy. Traffic is not an edgy band. There's nothing ever too aggressive about them or too like out there, other than some early Psych explorations, which are heavily dated now. Heavily? Or you heavily date something? But yeah, I got nothing to say about this album because I don't ever listen to it. I've maybe listened to it 3 times my entire life, and I was bored all 3 times. Just not my kind of music. So yeah, number 8, Far From Home. Number 7 is Shootout at the Fantasy Factory. This came out in 73. It was their 6th studio, with one of those studios being Half Live. And this is another one I just never, ever listened to at all. I just don't think any of the songs are any good. They're not memorable. They don't stick with me. There's a couple moments, maybe in the longer songs, where there's maybe kind of a good little groove for a minute or two, but then that kind of goes away. There is a song on here called Sometimes I Feel So Uninspired, which is so unfortunate because I think this whole album is uninspired. Yeah, man, it's just, there's not much here. It sounds like the sort of sound that Traffic has established over the last, I guess, 3 albums with that studio album, right? And so you get that soft, it's like soft rock with prog, but I don't want to call it soft rock because that has its own connotation, but it's not heavy prog, right? Genesis is heavier than this band at times, and you got Steve Winwood still in the band, so it's a very Steve Winwood driven album. Wood is still around playing saxophones and flutes, so you still have that sort of pastoral proggy element that infects some of their songs that I don't really like. Capaldi's still on drums, and then you got some other musicians who have joined them. So it's a six piece at this point, but I just, and I think there's additional personnel. Yeah, there are. So yeah, there's a lot of people playing on this, but it just does not add up to anything. And like, I don't know. I listened to it. I maybe listened to it a handful of times back in the day. I revisited it earlier this week. It didn't do anything for me again. Maybe the best song is the title track, but even then, I think that's kind of boring. And I always think that a song called Sometimes I Feel So Uninspired is going to leave me feeling inspired, and it's going to like resonate and maybe like be effective, but it never does. I just don't think it's a very good song. Yeah, I don't like this album. I just think it's kind of boring, kind of bland, kind of just safe and predictable, and kind of doesn't do anything for me. So that's why it's at number 7. But yeah, Shootout at the Fantasy Factory, number 7. Number 6, the last of the ones that I kind of never listened to is Last Exit. Officially their third album. Side A is studio and is kind of like, I think there's like some single tracks on here, and there's maybe like a B side of like an early single. So it's like kind of they're culling some leftover studio recordings and putting them on an album. It doesn't really feel like an, like a statement album as much as it's probably somebody, the record company, them just deciding to put out product. In the meanwhile, came out in 69. And it's just, it's got two really good songs that I think are really good. One of which appears on one of their live albums that I really like, on side A. So you have like, it's just 5 songs on side A. One of them is an instrumental. I think they're from like their B-sides of like, one of them's the B-side of the Feeling All Right song. I think the other ones are just a single. But the 2 songs that I think really, really work, Shanghai Noodle Factory, just kind of fun, just kind of an upbeat, good song. And then Medicated Goo, which closes out side A, which is also, I think, a really good song. And there's a live version of that on one of their live albums that I think is pretty decent. The other stuff, it's just kind of fun. It's kind of there. It's not all that great. It's not bad, but it's just, just kind of fun and listenable. The live stuff has never really grabbed me. You got like a 10-minute version of something called Feeling Good, and then you got a song called Blind Man. They're kind of jammy, but I don't think this band's strength is like guitar solo jams. I think their strength are like the kind of slow burning things that they do on the title track to one of these albums that's coming up, The Low Spark of High Heel Boys. I like that slow burning kind of, you got some like flute or saxophone just kind of lingering around, but kind of not driving the melody. I like that kind of stuff. These 2 tracks have never really resonated with me. I don't think it's as good as some of the other live stuff that they've released, which is not great, but it's listenable. But yeah, I just never listened to this. But I do have a Traffic playlist on various iPods and streaming music services. Sorry about that. And I do have Shanghai Noodle Factory and Medicated Goo on those playlists because I like both of those songs. But other than that, I don't know. I think it's just kind of I think the live tracks are kind of weak, not the best sound quality. And I think other than those 2 tracks I've named, it's just kind of pedestrian, high B plus, A minus levels. Maybe not even A minus, maybe B plus level Traffic stuff. But yeah. But now these next 5 albums, I got positive things to say about. On to number 5. Number 5 is their 7th album, When the Eagle Flies. This came out in 1974. And this is an interesting album. Apparently, like, the backstory of this was like, they pretty much like, it's like almost like they went in and they jammed a bunch of music, or, they had a couple sets of lyrics that I think Capaldi had written. And then they just kind of went in, and like Winwood didn't really put a lot of effort into the music, and some of the songs that he wrote, he just kind of improvised on the spot, or he didn't really devise melodies for Capaldi's lyrics and just kind of like winged it. And so there's this very sort of laid back, jammy, for lack of a better word, vibe to some of this stuff. And I like it. Like, I think they're sort of, when they're not trying to like compared to that last stuff where the live stuff had like some pretty like lengthy guitar playing at one point, which I don't think was their strength. This is more like a just kind of riding a vibe, you know, and Winwood can do what he does on keyboards, and, you know, Chris Wood can do his flute and sax stuff, and it's kind of like, I don't want to say dreamy, but kind of floaty at time. And I think meandering a lot is a word that I've read in reviews of this, that I think it's good. It's one of those albums I like to listen to in the background sometimes, or like it's a definite late at night chill out album. The second track, Dream Gerard, I think is what it's called. The longest track on this has that just sort of kind of floaty vibe, and kind of floats to some neat places. Not a very hard hitting album. It's definitely not going to convert anybody to be a Traffic fan at all, ever. But I think if you're already a Traffic fan, and particularly if you like the two albums that preceded this, John Barleycorn and Low Spark, I think you might be able to like this album and kind of get into the flow and the general just vibe that it's creating. Yeah, I think Dream Gerard is the highlight. There's a song called Memories of a Rock and Rolla that I think is pretty good. The closing track, When the Eagle Flies, has its moments. So it's not a great album. It's probably like a B tier album as far as quality goes, but I just like the vibe. I like there's a laziness about it, and kind of just a chill quality that resonates with me. That I think in a way defines Traffic. You know, they're, like I've said, they're not aggressive, they're not hard hitting, and this is them at their most non-aggressive and not hard hitting. But I think it's got its moments, and I think it's worth checking out if you're already a Traffic fan. If you're not, skip it. Wait to become a Traffic fan. And if you don't like the things that are the top 4 on this list, I can't imagine how or why you would like this. But it's my number 5, When the Eagle Flies. Number 4 is The Low Spark of High Heel Boys. This came out in, I don't know when this came out, like 1971, I think, 1971. And it has 6 tracks, and it is at number 4 because 2 of them I just kind of don't like. The opening, Hidden Treasure, which is like a softer, folkier prog folk with some flute in it, and I just don't think the melody doesn't hook me. I don't think it's a very good opener. And then the closing, Rainmaker, which is like almost 8 minutes long. It's also kind of an acoustic proggy thing with some flute, and it just kind of meanders, I think, not in a good way. I think I just used that word in a positive way, using it in a not a positive way. So I don't like those 2 tracks. And so that means there's only 4 that I like, but I really like the other 4. You get the title track is the second song, The Low Spark of High Heel Boys, a long 12-minute, takes its time to develop, kind of repetitive. It's just kind of the same verse chorus over and over again, but I really like the vibe. I love the piano. I just love everything about this song. And I'm kind of still amazed at this point in my life that more jam bands have not sort of incorporated this into their repertoire. Like I think both Fish and even Mo, because maybe not, you know, with Al playing the keyboards, maybe it doesn't make as much sense for Mo, but the groove and just the mid-tempo vibe, like Fish could have rocked this, like coming out of a Tweezer jam or coming out of anything. Just this, the way the song itself like starts off where they're playing and then the volume gets louder, and then they kind of, once it gets fully loud, they kind of go into the song itself. It's got some neat little moments in it. It's just a great 12 minutes. Doesn't really go anywhere epic. There's no real epic jammy moments, but it's just a really good, feel-good 12 minutes. And then we get Rock and Roll Stew, which is a nice little upbeat rock number, for lack of a better word. Many Amount of Freedom, kind of a longer, more proggy type number, not aggressively proggy, but a little more indulgent as a song. And then the absolutely fantastic Light Up or Leave Me Alone, which has one of the greatest guitar riffs. It's like do-do-do, boom, 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 boom. And then just some great singing. I don't think Winwood sings on this one, right? I think, who is singing on this one? On that track? Who is singing on that track? I don't think it's Winwood on that one. Yeah, Capaldi's doing the lead vocals on Light Up and Leave Me Alone, and I think it's fantastic. But yeah, Just a really good little album. It's interesting. I'm looking at the original track listing, and then my CD. They've kind of switch the order. But I do think having Hidden Treasure as the opening song should not be it. I think you put something like a Rock and Roll Stew as the opener, like start off hard, and then let that sort of ease into the mid-tempo, positive meandering of the Low Spark. And then maybe put Hidden Treasure to finish out the side. It kind of just makes more sense to me. But anyways, it's a really good album. At least it's got 4 really, really good songs on here. So yeah, that would be my number 4. The Low Spark of High Heel Boys. Number 3 is their debut album, which came out in 1968. It's just called, Mr. Fantasy. Yeah, that one. Called Mr. Fantasy. And there's a handful of songs on here that I absolutely love. That I'm going to give away are going to be on my top 10 song list. The problem is, all the songs I don't really love are songs that are really, really dated and sound like 1968 psych pop numbers that just, people don't make songs like this anymore. They just sound dated, like a band exploring the boundaries of psych pop music in 1968. One of those is the third song, House for Everyone. It has this obnoxious, I hate to say the word obnoxious, but this like studio manipulation where the sound starts and then there's like some weird like doonch, like just some weird effects going on to make it feel kind of trippy. Dealer just sounds completely dated. Utterly Simple has sort of a sort of sitar raga vibe that I don't think has aged very well. Hope I Never Find Me There just also sounds really dated. But everything else on here is so ridiculously good that I wanted to put it higher. I wanted to put it at number 2, but I can't because it really is. There's 4 songs that just kind of make me cringe. They sound so dated. But the rest of this stuff is fantastic. Heaven Is in Your Mind is a great little psych pop opener. It's got a nice jammy guitar part at the end. I think Dave Mason is here on guitar, playing really well. It's like a good minute outro of guitar playing that is awesome. The phenomenally fun, quirky, vaudevillian, weird Berkshire Poppies, which reminds me of Dukes of Stratosphere's XTC's alter ego band. And his name was Albert Brown, and his name was, that's not what it's called, right? But that Albert Brown song from there, it reminds me of that. It's got that really silly kind of vaudevillian aspect, and but it's fun, it's catchy, the melody is great. Then we get House for Everyone, horrible song, or just incredibly, has not aged well. No Face, No Name, No Number. I'm Looking for a Girl that has that. A really nice little ballad with Steve Winwood. His voice sounds just fantastic. And then Dear Mr. Fantasy. I would put that up against any other song as one of the best psych rock pop songs ever written. White Rabbit obviously would be up there, but if I were to do like a bracket, and do a war of like pop songs, I think I would seed Dear Mr. Fantasy as number 1. White Rabbit would be seeded as number 1 also, and there's probably a Beatles song would be in there for sure. But I love the song. I love the vocals. I love the lyrics. I love the da-na-na-na-na-na, just that riff. Utterly amazed that the Grateful Dead are the only band that regularly or somewhat regularly or kind of regularly did this as a live song. I don't know why more jam bands do not, or maybe the ones I don't listen to do, and I just don't know. I think Dear Mr. Fantasy is just a ridiculously great song. Then you get Dealer, Utterly Simple, which are dated and don't go well. Colored Rain, a great little pop psych song with some neat little almost proggy moments in the middle that just kind of get weird. It's like 2 minutes and 40 seconds of just almost utter perfection. Hope I Never Find Me There, which is dated. And then a somewhat obnoxious to start and end with song called Giving to You that has some like some talking and some like recorded things that are used to introduce the song. And then we go into like a 4-minute, 3.5-minute jam that kind of sounds like a Booker T and the MGs jam with just some keyboards and some guitar and some flute and everybody's just going at it. And it's got a really good vibe and it shows that this band can kind of cut loose and have fun. But then it ends with some more of that talking where somebody's like, jazz, this is jazz, man. Like some cool hipster, like Wolfman Jack type thing. I don't think it works very well. But the song itself, apart from the beginning and ending, I think is a pretty nice way to end the album. So yeah, I think this is a really good album. I enjoy this. Again, 4 songs I skip every time. But yeah, other than that, I really, really enjoy this. And I think Dear Mr. Fantasy is one of the great psych prog rock songs of all time, people. On to number 2. Number 2 is their second album, Traffic. Their first album out actually came out in 1967, at the very end of 1967, December. This came out in 1968. My CD says 1968 on the back of it, so blame the CD. Their second album is my second favorite. There are no songs on here. There's maybe 2 songs on here that I think are as good as maybe the stuff on that first Mr. Fantasy album. But there's only one song, the lead track off side B, Vagabond Virgin, which I think is the only song that really hasn't dated well, hasn't aged well. The rest of the songs, they're starting to lean more towards a proggy vibe that they would have on the following albums, but they're still kind of firmly rooted. They got their foot in that psych pop, psych rock territory. And this is one of those albums that I think the more I listen to it, like it wasn't as immediately catchy as Mr. Fantasy, nor as immediately rewarding as the one that's number 1 on this list. But over time, I think some of these songs have resonated more, and just I appreciate them more the more I listen to them. Opens up with You Can All Join In, just like a fun, upbeat number, kind of funky in a weird little Traffic way. Pearly Queen, which is just has a really nice guitar riff. It's a little bit heavy, a little bit jammy. It was a good live number that they would play live. Don't Be Sad, another kind of poppy type, very Steve Winwoody type number. Who Knows What Tomorrow May Bring, another one leaning into that. And then Feeling All Right, I'm Not Feeling Too Good Myself, which was kind of a hit. I heard this on the radio. I knew this song prior to knowing Traffic. I like that song. It's a really good, just fun, feeling all right type song. Then we get Vagabond Virgin, which is kind of the only thing I think is dated on this. 40,000 Headmen, another great song, another great kind of story song that they tell. Another one that kind of a slower one, kind of slowly builds, kind of resonates the more you hear it, kind of just lingers with you a little bit. Crying to Be Heard, another one that I absolutely love, just sounds great. No Time to Live, and the fun little means to an end to end the album. Really, the only songs on here that I think are like standout tracks are Pearly Queen and Feeling All Right and 40,000 Headmen, but that takes a while. But there's nothing bad on here. And even Vagabond Virgin, I don't think sounds as dated as the stuff that sounds dated on their previous album. So it's a good listen. It's just a good, consistent, quality listen. Winwood's voice sounds great. The band sounds great. It's fun. It's serious. It's rocking. It's a little proggy. It's kind of a little all over the place. And I think you get maybe some of the best variety of flavors on a Traffic album on this album than you do get on any other album. The first one, too steeped in 67 motifs. The next one, or the next 2, 3, they've definitely kind of abandoned the psych and are more prog. This one has, I think, one of the best balances of all those different flavors. Coming in 1968, as it was. Anyways, that's number 2, which means only one album can be number 1, and we're on to it now. And number 1 is their 4th album, John Barleycorn Must Die. Yeah, it's pretty extreme. He does die too, quite brutally and graphically in the song. Might be a metaphor for something. But anyways, it's a 3-piece at this point, the band. Dave Mason is gone. It is just Winwood, Capaldi, and Chris Wood. And this is definitely more of a proggy, a little looser, a little jazzier. They've kind of abandoned their psych roots. And it's just, there's not a bad song on this album. I was going to say something else. Oh, this has been re-released and re-released and re-released several times. I only have the original. I also have it on vinyl somewhere back here. So the original only has 6 songs. I'm only going to talk about the 6-song version. I don't know what those other versions are. I haven't rebought this over the years. I've been more than happy with this one. So, but just so you know, if you do seek this out, there are additional songs. I think there's 8 tracks total on the re-releases. So anyways, but the original 6-track version, it's a pretty great album. Like, going back to that guy from Taste Like Music, love your opinion, love your channel. You guys are great. But I think this is almost an essential album. Like, I think if you're a true lover of music, you need to have this album. It's a good album. It's maybe Steve Winwood at his best. if you maybe him between this and the Blind Faith album, I think this might even be better than the Blind Faith album. This is better than the Blind Faith album. Opens up with Glad, this awesome instrumental with just this utterly just infectious like piano, dun, 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 just little jammy thing that they go off into, and you kind of, it's upbeat, and then towards the end it kind of gets spacey, and you can kind of just feel like the band slow down and there's a lot more space to play with, and they kind of explore that for a minute or two before they go right into Freedom Rider. Freedom Rider is just a really good song, just a really good vocal, just nice little prog rock type pop number, if that makes any sense. 6.5 minutes, so we definitely got a prog length there. Empty Pages, more of a maybe a dramatic ballad, staring at the empty pages. Some good vocals by Winwood. Again, just more of a straightforward like rock song, but again, not like a Stones rock song, like a Steve Winwood soft edges rock song, but a good rock song. Stranger to Himself, another really good sort of straightforward type rock song, with some good lyrics, some good vocal performances. I think the band just sounds great on all these songs. And then an absolute masterpiece, the title track-ish, John Barleycorn. I don't know if this is an original song. This might be a cover of like a classic. It sounds like it is a traditional song. It is a traditional song. And it's pretty much a metaphor for, I guess, harvesting barley, or, making alcohol, and, taking the barley and cutting it down and chopping it into little pieces. And the lyrics are incredibly graphic. I guess it's about making beer or whiskey, right? You use barley to make whiskey, I think. What are the lyrics to this? Because I think they're great lyrics. And I should have brought these up beforehand. But it's the music is so pastoral and folky and beautiful, that if you're not listening to the lyrics, you might just kind of like, oh, what a sweet little song. But then when you listen to the lyrics and you just like are getting the images, and like in Steve Winwood's beautiful voice, I think it's more powerful. Like, and these three men, they swear that John Barleycorn must die. They've plowed, they've sown, they've harrowed him in. These threw clods upon his head. They made a solemn, but there's something where they like tear him apart. They've hired men with the scythe so sharp to cut him off at the knee. They've rolled him and tied him by the way, serving him most barbarously. They've hired men with the sharp pitchforks who pricked him to the heart, and the loader he has served him worse than that, for he's bound him to the cart. So yeah, it's about a grain that's growing, but it's personified as John Barleycorn, and it's just a great song, and it's a great performance, and the whole vibe is just magical. And the first time I heard this song was after a Dead show, driving back from Shoreline in the back of a microbus, in a psychedelic state of mind, and I think it forever changed my life. And then it closes out with Every Mother's Song, a slightly longer, more proggier type, straightforward Steve Winwoody type song. But yeah, a great album with two of their best songs in the opening Glad and the sort of title trackish John Barleycorn. But I would say this is easily their peak to my ears. My number one, John Barleycorn Must Die. But that's it. That was my defense of Traffic for why they're not a band that should be utterly forgotten. Though, yeah, 3 of their albums, I'm okay with that. Number 5, then one that was 5 on this list, I think if you're a Traffic fan, has its value. But I think the top 4 are worth checking out. Like, I think if you like flute and you're a little more inclined to like English folk rock with a proggy edge, I think you might actually like these better than I do. And as someone who loves 60s psych music, I'm even surprised at how dated the stuff on Mr. Fantasy feels, because normally I'm down for that kind of stuff, but that's how dated the stuff on Mr. Fantasy feels, I think. But still, there's really good stuff on those top 4 albums that are on this list. So, which would be Mr. Fantasy, Traffic, John Barleycorn, and Low Spark. I think those are albums worth checking out if you haven't checked them out. Again, not edgy, not dangerous, they're not breaking new ground, but I think there are some really, really good songs and material on there. But that's it. That's all I got for Traffic. Let me know what you think about this band. Let me know if you've heard them, if checked them out. If you go check them out because of this, let me know. whether or not I've got it right, whether I've got it wrong. You know how comments work, people? Do it. And I don't know a lot about this band, so I'm sure I made mistakes as far as personnel and stuff like that. But really, Jim Capaldi, Steve Winwood are the heart of it. Dave Mason was early on. Chris Wood was around for a good long. It's those four with different musicians coming in and out. But yeah, that's all I got to say, people. Thanks for watching. Stay warm. It was 50 at noon today. It's supposed to be 18 tonight, and we keep losing the internet, so which is gonna suck if it's cold and we can't do anything but be cold. But yeah, all right, that's it. I'm rambling. Peace. Talk to you later. Stay warm.